She had 3 kids and a gorgeous home.
It was on the water. It was a beautiful, beautiful home.
And a hunky bodybuilder husband.
Paul was about 6'4", 285 pounds of solid muscle.
With money in the bank.
He had money stashed away, a lot of cash from his business.
It was the perfect Long Island love story until a shocking murder.
Came in through the back door, was stumbling and shot, fell to the ground.
Revealed a riveting tale of sex, money, and a tragic case of mistaken identity. Next on Snapped. Leanne Rydell grew up on Long Island, New York. She was a typical middle-class kid.
Leanne was born in December of 1967. Average Long Island family. Husband, wife. She's the second of 4 children. We had a pretty normal life, going out, holidays, 4th of July picnics.
But when she was 11, Leanne's parents split.
Her mother moved to Florida to live with her gay lover and left Leanne to be raised by her father.
Divorce is really tough on kids, and they tend to blame themselves. They're confused about the situation. It's really difficult. A lot of times the parents don't really talk to them about what's going on and try to explain it to them. So they're left with a lot of confusion. Then you add the confusion of the situation with her, where her mother left with the woman.
Leanne's teen years were rocky, and she made some mistakes.
As she went towards teenage, she had a rough time. And her acting out was pretty tough.
Part of Leanne's acting out resulted in an early failed marriage. She had a son at 19 named Christopher and raised him by herself.
She's a wonderful parent, very caring, nurturing mother. She cares about her children.
There were boyfriends through the years, but nothing serious. Then, in the mid-90s, Leanne started working out in a local gym. Surrounded by men with big plans and big muscles, in June of 1998, she met the hunk of her dreams. Paul Rydell was an imposing giant with the heart of a child.
Paul is the first muscle-bound weightlifter type guy she was ever with. He walked in and took up the door frame. He made her feel good about herself, and he was warm and fuzzy and cuddly and all of those wonderful things.
Fuzzy and cuddly enough that Leanne soon agreed to marry him.
We were very happy when Leanne got engaged to Paul.
Their wedding in July 1998 was storybook.
Leanne and Paul's wedding was great. Paul wanted the best of the best, and he had everything, including his wife. She was the best. They had a beautiful church and a great catering hall. Leanne was so happy that day.
Paul's best man was his best friend, Alex Algieri.
Everybody knew Alex and everybody loved him. He's just the kind of guy you can't say anything bad about him.
They rode motorcycles together. They drove the same cars. They dressed alike. They looked alike. They were about as close as 2 friends could possibly be. They did everything together.
Paul and Alex had also recently gone into business together. They opened a gym that catered to round-the-clock lifters like themselves.
They wanted a place where people could go and, if you got off work at 9 o'clock at night or at 2 o'clock in the morning, you wanted to work out, and it's open 24 hours.
For Leanne and Paul, everything seemed to be falling into place.
It looked like the typical American dream. You start from scratch and you got a business going, you got a house, you have everything you want.
He ended up having this relationship with her, then she got pregnant.
But having everything you want takes a lot of work. Eventually, Paul started feeling the strain. The long hours required to run a 24-hour business eventually led him to try cocaine, and he got hooked.
Paul was using crack cocaine. She was following him around to crack houses and trying to find him in the middle of the night, 6, 8, 9 months pregnant.
Leanne was going to great lengths to keep the relationship intact. But why?
In a drug-addicted
household, generally the person who's using drugs makes apologies for what they're doing. I'll never do it again. I'll stop. I promise. Please give me another chance. So the person who's in that situation, the spouse, the victim, will want to give that person a chance because they love that person.
Leanne may also have been counting on the new baby to jolt Paul into straightening himself out.
It's a very common belief that a child is going to improve the relationship, or it's going to bring something to the relationship that the relationship didn't have. People end up getting married and they think it's all wonderful, and then it seems to kind of come apart or not work as well. And the hope is, we bring a baby into this. This is really going to fix that.
In Leanne and Paul's case, it seemed to work, at least at first.
He was extremely excited about the idea of having his own child. And when it turned out that it was his son, he described it as a turning point in his life.
Paul asked his best friend Alex to be Nicholas's godfather. But even the thrill of having a son wasn't enough to get Paul off cocaine.
She would find syringes in the house and vials, and she was afraid that Nicholas might accidentally prick himself with a needle.
In July 2000, Leanne had finally had enough.
Paul comes home from work one night, and his wife, his newborn son, and his stepson are gone, and the house is essentially cleaned out of all the furniture and valuables.
She left, and she went off to Florida. She moved in with her mother and her mother's gay lover.
Losing his son was just the wake-up call Paul needed to turn his life around.
He was absolutely petrified, panicked about never seeing his son again.
But Leanne didn't want Nicholas to grow up without a father either. So the two of them started working to save their marriage.
For 4 months, Paul was desperately trying to get her to come back.
The other thing you often get with couples, you get this kind of chase situation where you might have a woman leave really in the hopes that she's going to be chased and that he's going to come around and say, oh my gosh, I can't let you leave. I can't let this be over. I'm going to change. I'm going to make everything work. A woman in that situation is leaving in the hopes that it's going to really make the husband change.
Finally, in December, Leanne and her 2 children left Florida and moved back home to Long Island. It seemed that Paul and Leanne had beat the odds and were back together to stay. But a terrible tragedy would rip them apart again. And this time, the separation would be for life. It was January 2001. After a 6-month separation, Leanne and Paul Rydell were back together again. Back in Long Island and back at the business.
As far as Paul was concerned, things could not have been better. He was living with his wife and his son. They saw his son every day, went to work every day. In Paul's eyes, the marriage and the household was the same as it had been before Leanne fled to Florida with the child.
But 1 month after their return, a sudden act of violence would shatter their happy home. It happened on a Wednesday night behind Paul's gym in Amityville.
About 7:20, 7:25 in the evening. It was January 17th, so it was dark already. And the area behind the Dolphin Gym is not well lit, and it's kind of seedy. There's snow on the ground, it's cold.
It was Paul's night off. His partner and best friend Alex was working, and an aerobics class wanted a CD he had in his car.
Alex walked out the back door of the gym, went to his car, opened up the passenger side to get that CD out of the glove compartment, and man jumped out from a vehicle that was parked nearby. Alex turned around and shot Alex 3 or 4 times in the face and the head.
Alex came in through the back door, was stumbling and uttered and shot, fell to the ground.
By the time EMTs got Alex to the hospital, he was dead. The murder didn't make sense. No one could believe that someone wanted to kill Alex.
Alex was a great person, great loving person. He had a joy about life.
Who would want to kill this wonderful, peaceful soul?
It was a good question. And it wasn't long before people began to speculate that maybe Alex wasn't the intended target. That the bullet that killed Alex was supposed to kill his partner, Paul.
There were a lot of people that didn't like Poole. You had drug people that were not happy with Poole. You had organized crime people that were not happy with Poole.
No matter who the hit was meant for, the incident had Leanne horrified.
Immediately after Alex's funeral, Leanne approaches Paul and tells him, "What if it would have been me? What if the baby would have been in the car?"
Fearing for her family's safety, she convinced Paul to move the family back to Florida for good. So in February of 2001, Leanne, Paul, and the two kids moved to the Sunshine State.
We had plans on building this huge home. And I called down there and got Paul on the phone, and he told me all about the house. So I thought everything was, going well for them.
But it wasn't going well for the Suffolk County Police. They still had an unsolved murder on their hands and no leads.
There were no leads because Alex had no enemies.
Months went by, and Paul continued to try to run Dolphin Jim from his new home in Florida. Then, while on a business trip to New York, Paul heard a nasty rumor.
Paul decides that he's going to run his gym from Florida. He's going to fly up, do his business, and fly back. And meanwhile, a relative pulls Paul aside and tells him that each time he leaves to go back to New York, a guy named Rocco comes around the apartment.
Paul refused to believe Leanne wasn't being faithful to him. Besides, she had recently announced she was pregnant again.
Paul was thrilled. As a matter of fact, there were discussions about naming the baby Paul.
Once again, everything seemed perfect for the Rydells. And once again, it was anything but. In November of 2001, the cops in Long Island arrested a drug dealer named Michael Hubbard. In an interrogation room, Hubbard gave cops some very interesting information.
While he was up at the precinct, he said, "Listen, I know something about a murder." Essentially, what Mr. Hubbard was trying to do was get a better deal for himself.
As part of his plea agreement, Hubbard claimed a couple of Florida bodybuilders with underworld connections, Scott Paget and Ralph Rocco Salerno, were involved in Alex's murder. Cops quickly picked up Paget and Salerno and brought them in for questioning. Paget immediately blamed Salerno for the crime.
If you have cross statements to people saying exactly the opposite thing, one of them's going to want to cooperate and not get himself implicated, and that's what Scott Paget did.
When Paget turned on him, Rocco offered up his own version of the story, and this one had an unlikely player at the center of it, Leanne Rydell. Rocco claimed he had been having an affair with Leanne since the first time she moved to Florida.
Leanne was introduced to Salerno by her mother to protect her for when Paul did come down to bring back Nicholas to New York when he had visitation.
Some women are attracted to people in protector roles, people like policemen, people who are big people that they see as people who could defend them and keep them safe. And, Rocco is a big man and so was her husband, and generally, you're attracted to a certain type of person, and that seems to be who she was attracted to.
An affair in a situation where, the wife leaves is pretty common. So someone comes along and gives her attention and pays attention to her and gives her some love and makes her feel important and good about herself again. It's going to have a powerful effect on her.
But what did an affair with Leanne have to do with the murder of Alex Algieri? According to Rocco, everything. Rocco told the cops he had gone to New York to kill Paul Rydell, not Alex Algieri. But in the darkness of the alley, well, one muscle-bound hunk looks pretty much like the next.
They were very similar in features. They drove the same vehicles. They both had the same sticker, the Dolphin sticker on the back.
Oh, and Rocco had one more thing to add. He, not Paul, was the father of Leanne's new baby. Confronted with Rocco's confession, Leanne admitted to the affair.
When she spoke to the police, Leanne was very candid. She told them that Zachary was in fact his baby.
But Leanne adamantly denied she had anything to do with Alex's murder. She claimed that Rocco had done it after she and Paul appeared to be reconciling.
I think he saw her as a meal ticket, and that it looked like she was going to reconcile with Paul. He saw his opportunity was going out the window, and he figured, you know what? I'm going to get rid of this guy before they get together.
Faced with so many conflicting stories, the cops decided to let the courts sort it out. In March of 2003, Leanne was arrested for the murder of Alex Algieri. The next time the proud parents of little Zachary would be together would be in court. They'd be co-defendants in a murder trial. In March of 2004, Leanne Rydell and Rocco Salerno were facing charges of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and conspiracy in the death of Alex Algieri. In an unusual move, the state decided to try them at the same time, but with two different juries.
Jointly, they had two separate juries. One was for Ralph Salerno, the other was for Leanne Rydell. There were two defense tables, and Leanne was at one, Ralph was at the other.
Prosecutors began by telling the two juries that a cunning and manipulative Leanne had hired her boyfriend to kill her husband. But through a tragic case of mistaken identity, Rocco killed the wrong man. Then they started calling witnesses. It was quite a parade, a who's who of criminal lowlifes.
There was testimony from some very shady characters, underworld types who made deals with the prosecution so that they can save their own butts.
Not everyone who took the stand was on a butt-saving mission. One of the prosecution's key witnesses was Leanne's mother's former lover, a tough-talking New Yorker named Elizabeth Russo. She admitted bringing Ralph Salerno into the picture to put the screws to Paul.
Liz actually said to the guys, he needs his legs broken. Liz is from Manhattan, Mulberry Street, so she kind of talks like she knew guys, so she's kind of a toughie.
Next, prosecutors claimed that after Paul and Leanne moved back to New York, Rocco rented a car and left Florida with the intent to shoot Paul, as per explicit instructions from Leanne. But the defense was quick to point out some discrepancies with that story.
The police said that Salerno rented a van in the Enterprise rent-a-car with a credit card from a certain individual. There's no record of that on that individual's credit card. There's no record of the at Enterprise that they ever rented a van to Salerno or to anyone else at that time.
Leanne's attorneys also took issue with the claim that Leanne was the mastermind behind the murder plot.
They picked whatever night they got up here, which was a Wednesday night. Leanne knew that that's, Paul's night off. Why send him the night that he was off?
But then the prosecution played their ace in the hole.
The state's key witness against my daughter was Michael Paglianti.
Paglianti, a convicted drug dealer, gave what he claimed was an eyewitness account of Leanne plotting with Rocco to kill her husband.
Michael Paglianti testified unequivocally that he was present when Salerno was first approached with instructions that the woman in New York who wanted her husband beaten badly and wanted his legs broken, that after Leanne returned from New York, Leanne no longer wanted his legs broken, but wanted him bleeping dead.
Some of Paglianti's most riveting testimony was Leanne's reaction to Alex's wake.
After the man who put the bullets into Alex's face and head arrived back in Florida, Leanne's statement was, "You stupid ass, you killed the wrong guy. How do you think I felt at his wake, looking into his girlfriend's eyes, saying that I'm sorry, knowing that I'm the one responsible for his murder?"
It was damaging testimony, to be sure, but the defense still claimed it wasn't enough to send Leanne to prison.
There's not a shred of physical evidence that connected her to this crime. There's not a shred of objective evidence that connected her to this crime. There wasn't a shred of scientific evidence, DNA evidence, fingerprints, ballistics, nothing. She was connected to this crime by the testimony of drug dealers, murderers, thieves, and liars.
As the trial wound down, it was looking like it could go either way for Leanne. True, there was no irrefutable physical evidence connecting Leanne to the murder, but there was lots and lots of testimony that put her at the head of the plot. Of course, there was still the question of why Leanne would want Paul dead. And for that, the prosecution had a very simple answer: greed.
The prosecution alleged that Leanne wanted Paul out of the picture so that she and Rocco could share in his fortune.
What better gravy train to follow than end his life and inherit his gym and his money and his house and all his valuables?
In closing arguments, Leanne's defense claimed that Rocco had gone to New York to kill Leanne's husband, not on her direction, but out of jealousy, pure and simple. Of course, tragically, he had killed the wrong man. And when Rocco's jury returned in just 4 hours, it looks like they agreed. They found Rocco guilty of first-degree murder. But there was no word from Leanne's jury. A day went by, and then another, then 2 more.
The lawyer kept saying, well, this is good, you know, they didn't come back right away. This is a good sign.
But when the jury did return, the news wasn't good. They found Leanne just as guilty as Rocco.
I think that that's sort of the key, the fact that they were tried together. And so the jury saw this woman and the guy she was having an affair with. So the jury to see this relationship in court, or at least that see them together in court, I'm sure played a big part in her being found guilty.
If someone innocent is killed, it tends to make juries and just the general society a lot more angry, because it could have, it was the wrong person.
Whatever it was that made Leanne go to such extreme and ultimately tragic measures to get out of her relationship with her husband may never be fully understood. But she'll have 25 years to life to think about it.
There are a lot of women that are in terrible situations that don't go to that extreme. I think in this situation, or in the situations where it does happen, I think you've got a combination of some, the situation that's happening at that time, along with maybe some like biological predisposition in them, or something that happened to them in childhood that makes them sort of more likely to go to this extreme.